but now I know how bad things are. Yeah, but you also know how good things are. And you know how kind of yin and yang everything is now. You know, with the darkness that chases the light and the light that chases the darkness, and it's this eternal circle that goes on. Which one do you live in? You know, whether you live in heaven or whether you live in hell, that's largely a matter of choice. Which one do you want to live in? Do you want to live in heaven or do you want to live in hell? Because if you want to live in hell, you're going to find a way to do it, man. You can dwell on things. You can let things eat you alive. But here's the thing, yeah, people die, but people live also. Which one are you going to do, man? Life is for the living. Like whether you get in the hole or whether you leave your problems in the hole, that's a matter of choice. Yeah, it's attractive to live in hell for a lot of people until you can't escape it. There's a part of the black hole called the event horizon that once you cross that threshold, you can't escape. You can't escape it. And people like to walk right up to the event horizon of their depression and their darkness, because it's almost like fun and exciting to feel this way. That all of a sudden you get sucked into it and there's no escape from it. The people around you don't want to be around you anymore, which makes everything worse. You can't live with yourself anymore, which makes everything worse. You can't be a positive influence in the world anymore, which makes everything just torrentially worse. And then at that point, it's too late to turn around and escape it. Yeah, lots of stuff's happened to you. I get that. And I'm sorry for every single syllable of it. I mean that. But you have to decide at some point if you want to be in that hole or if you want to be looking down in that hole and leaving your stuff behind and going on and living. And I hope you choose life, man. I mean that earnestly, dude. Like, I hope that you choose life. Choose life with exactly as it is. With every bit of joy and suffering and excitement and depression and exhilaration and everything in between. The whole totality of it. Not get hung up on the idea, anyway, of it being any different, but instead just saying, this is life. All of its highs and lows. What the hell do I know? What's incredible about the poem is the dude wrote it when he was 19 years old. But that's actually a significant theme of the poem. He's terrified, so he's at a dinner party, and we're told at the very, very beginning that he wants to ask somebody a question. And then before we can even ask the question, he says, but don't ask what is it, let us go and make our visit. Essentially he's saying, I'll get around to the question. But first, before I tell you what the question is, let's look at some things. And he goes around, he kind of examines this dinner party, he examines his own life, he examines future possibilities, he goes back to the dinner party, and I'll give you a heads up, he never asks the question. He never tells us what the question is. We just know that he wants to ask somebody a question. And we can kind of gather what the question probably is, but he never tells us what it is. But every time he goes back to every time he goes back to the dinner party, that's the thing he's always terrified about. He actually at one point references himself being pinned and wriggling on the wall, like everybody there is scrutinizing him, examining him. He references that that he'll be walking down the stair, and they're going to notice that there's a bald spot in the middle of his hair, which I used to think was funny for some reason. And they will say, "My, how his arms and legs are growing thin." So he thinks that everyone's looking at him like, wow, he's getting skinny, getting awfully thin, that's weird. And he's writing this about getting old and about how people are going to kind of examine him and scrutinize him as he gets old. And he's terrified of being under the light of examination. And you can figure out why. It's because he doesn't feel like he's good enough. And we find out kind of why towards the beginning. I don't mind telling you because I don't know that we'll remember it at that point, but at the very beginning of the poem, he begins by saying, let us go then, you and I, when evening is spread out against the sky, like a patient etherized upon a table. Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights and one-night cheap hotels and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells. Streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent that leads us to an overwhelming question. But don't ask, what is it? Let us go and make our visit. In that section there, he begins by saying that he wants to say something beautiful to a person, but he ends up saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. So as good as he is with words, he says the wrong thing at the wrong time. And then he starts to describe where he's from, which is a dingy part of town. But here he is in this really nice part of town. And so he realized that he's out of place, that what's allowed him access to the nice part of town is the fact that he's educated. But that's not where he's from, and that's not his upbringing, and that's not his background. And he almost feels like an imposter, like he doesn't belong there, he doesn't deserve to be there, which is an interesting thing because he's there by merit, by earning it. Other people are born into it. He gets there by earning it. But if you go somewhere and you're allowed to be there just because you were born into it, then it doesn't matter how much people analyze you, no matter what faults and flaws you have. There's nothing that would say, therefore, you have to get out of here. You don't belong here. There's no way you can screw up so badly. Like, for example, if you're in your family, let's say, for example, you get married, and you bring your spouse into the family, and then you tell them they're now part of the family. And then everyone hugs, and everyone says, you're one of us now. You're part of the family. Are they part of the family, though? What happens if you divorce? Do they still get invited to Christmas? No, they don't. What if you guys break up? Do they still get invited to the birthday parties? Does your mom still call them on their birthday to wish them happy birthday and all that? No, they're not really part of the family. Now, what if you guys broke up because you're the one who screwed everything up terribly? Does your family therefore say, you got to go? And then they bring in your boyfriend or girlfriend and say, they can stay, but you have to go. No, they keep you around because there's no level of screwing up that you can, because it doesn't matter how you're analyzed. You belong there. That's his thing, is that he earns his way into this area, but he's afraid of being examined because he feels he's going to come up short and they won't want him there anymore. So I'm still working out the idea of the responsibilities too. Like, I wonder, are you guys worried about responsibilities? Or are you worried about not being able to fulfill the responsibilities? In other words, if you were confident about the future and confident about your ability to meet your responsibilities, then your responsibilities probably wouldn't bother you very much, because you would just see it like, that's part of life. Like, not even a particularly negative part of life. But if you're somebody who's concerned about your basic ability to fulfill your responsibilities, even things like food, rent, car payment, gas, all that, then it would probably be pretty frightening for you. So when you're in darkness, it means you don't know. And so as soon as you start to know something, it comes to light. What's that? You become afraid of it, which becomes a darkness. So in other words, darkness becomes light, becomes darkness. When you're a little kid, you don't know anything. So that's when we say, like, you're in the dark. You just don't know. You don't know what's going on. And then as you become older, you start to find out about things. And suddenly it's like, wow. And then, I didn't know that was the case. And then it can start to get to you to the point where now it becomes darkness again. So she was in the dark, and then she got a little bit of light. And now she has to decide if she wants to go further into the light, which is going to bring about a different type of a darkness. Not the darkness of not knowing, but the darkness of, if you remember from our talk last time, of knowing maybe too much and not knowing how to process it. And it's that last part that becomes very important. It goes back to something I think that you were saying something. It's about, or maybe Anne, it's about being able to know how to process the things that you come across. In other words, it isn't just like you find out some negative things. It's about whether or not you have the ability to process those negative things and make sense of them in a healthy way. Yeah.
They find out something sad, like they don't let it completely onto their perception.
Yeah.
When you find it out as an adult, it's like you hear what's going on.
Yeah, and that's an important thing, because we say oftentimes, well, kids are resilient. Kids can bounce right back. One of the reasons is because kids just don't know any better. Kids don't know what else is going on. Kids don't know what's underneath the layer there. And the kids, I think about, I hesitate to say this, but I will anyway. Think of something that may have been traumatic from when you were a kid, that at the time you kind of were able to just shrug your shoulders and then like walk forward in life. And then now imagine now you're walking, all of a sudden one day it hits you, you're like, wait a second. And it occurs to you now something that didn't occur to you 10 years ago, or 12 years ago, or 15 years ago, or well, it wouldn't have occurred to you 20 years ago. You weren't around yet. But even something that didn't occur to you a long time ago, but now you can process it in a different way. And now you might be like, oh man, that messes me up. But now at this age, you have some toolkit to be able to process the things that happen. At the time you didn't, but then again at the time you also didn't understand the complexities of it. You know, like, sorry, every example I can think of is just really dark. I'm trying not to go to dark places right now, these days. But it just seems to steer the car in that direction every time.
Do the darkest one.
What's that?
I said do the darkest one.
I don't want to, man, because then if it's too dark, it's too personal.
I mean, isn't dark comedy just a form of expression?
One more time?
Isn't
But
dark
half
comedy just a
speed.
form of expression?
Darkness is a form of expression?
Like dark comedy?
That's true. That's true.
That's how you.
They ever tell you about my bad week? I had a bad week one time. My mom died on a Tuesday. Actually, backwards. My grandmother died on Tuesday. My mom died Wednesday. A friend of mine was killed Friday, and another friend of mine committed suicide on Saturday. That was a bad week, man. You know? And I remember calling up a friend of mine, his name is Adam, and I just told him, hey dude, I'm having a bad week. And I told him what was happening, and I asked him, can we get together? And he just goes, everyone around you was dying? I go, yeah. And he goes, can't we talk on the phone then? Which was funny. It was a dark moment, but it was. Now, I wasn't like 10 years old anymore. But the short of it is that there were people, everybody who was around that situation, nobody knew what to do. I've talked to you before asking that question who do you want to be when tragedy hits your life? Do you want to be the person who's sitting in the corner crying and actually becomes a liability to everybody around you? I'm sure you all know that person, that when there's something tragic, that person actually makes things worse, because not even that they make it about themselves, but that they become kind of useless to the situation. Weeping, and oh my God, blah, blah, blah. That's my sister, by the way. Instead, would you rather be the person who everyone turns to in those situations and goes, what do we do? In other words, they see you as a person who's forthright and wise, courageous, has everything together, at least as best as anybody who's there. And they turn to you and they go, well, what do you do? Unfortunately in life, I guess, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm that guy. So even when my mom had a heart attack, my dad looked at me and goes, what do we do? I'm like, I don't know, you're the adult. And he's like, no. And that's when my dad finally decides to tell me, I've always thought that you were incredibly mature and wise and smart for your age. I'm like, oh, bullshit. Oh, now I know what I'm doing. Well, but when the police came looking for me, I didn't know what I was doing, but now I do. So when the detectives questioned me, then I was a kid, but now I'm an adult. So I was the one who had to make all those decisions for my mom's help. For my mom, I had to decide what kind of treatment. She was in a coma. I had to make a decision if she was going to get treatment, if she was going to be on life support or not. So imagine being 19, a couple years older than yourselves right now, and having to make all of those decisions for your mom, and then the next day or so for your grandmother, and then finding out all of those other things kind of piled up on you. And I think about it, I'm like, dude, 19, what would I have done differently back then versus what I did now? One thing I know for sure is everything happened in such a way that I've never really actually mourned my mom's death. I've never visited her grave before. I know exactly, since the day she was buried, I've never been to her grave before. When I drive to Los Angeles, I drive past it all the time. I always think to myself, I should go there. Never visited my grandmother's grave either. Or my friend who's buried, either my friends who were buried that week either. And I don't know if that's all a matter of just being able to sit there and say, life is for the living. Or if it's a matter of, what is it that 40-year-old Scanlon looks at and says, I can process it now, but maybe 19-year-old Scanlon wasn't able to process it in quite the same way. In other words, how would I deal with it differently today? Now, if I differently today, I imagine I'd probably go visit more. But water under the bridge, right? What stops you from visiting now? Well, that's up in LA. Guess where I'm going this weekend? LA. I've been to lots of funerals. I talk at them. I was just at one a few weeks ago. I go to them. I have one of my rules for life. Go to every wedding and every funeral that you're invited to, because you'll want lots of people at both of yours. So go to them. Go to them. And a lot of times what you need to do is you need to walk up to that grave, and whatever it is that you're carrying around, whatever's on your shoulders, whatever's in your heart, you need to leave that shit in the hole that's in front of you. You need to bury that shit with everything else. You need to put it there and leave it behind. And even if it's not just about that person, whatever it is that's bothering you in life, what you can realize when you look in that hole is that from the day you're born until you're riding a hearse, man, there's nothing that's so bad that it couldn't be worse. And that person who's in the hole would trade places with you in an instant. Whatever problem you have is nothing compared to the problem that they have. So you leave it there. It doesn't mean you ignore your problems, but you start to realize that there's still breath in your lungs, and so therefore there's still the power in you to overcome those challenges. Yeah. Dude, you drop my flow and you say nothing?
It's because I didn't know if you meant like you buried your struggles with the person that you never met.
Yeah. Yeah, go. In fact, maybe that's something you need to do anyway. That's advice my friend gave me, Martise. Martise told me, I was going through some challenges, and my friend Martise said, you need to go to a funeral. I'm like, no one's died. Do I have to make my own? And he's like, no. He says, you just go to the cemetery, go on a Saturday, go on a Sunday, you find a funeral, you attend it. You walk up to the casket, you walk up to the pit, and he said, into the hole, and you leave that shit in there. Whatever it is, you go there and you do it. And interestingly enough, the last time I did that, I didn't tell you guys the whole story around it, but I did tell you guys, I was at a cemetery a few months ago, and I encountered I guess a grave marker for a dude who was killed. I think he was 22 years old. He died, I think it was last year before last. I ended up looking up his name and found the story in the Union Tribune. He was driving a Corvette, and he rear-ended somebody going too fast, and he died. And they have like the marker for him. They have a picture of him and everything. It's a really nice picture, really nice marker. I read that he borrowed a Corvette from somebody. He was driving too fast. I think he was out in Carlsbad, and he rear-ended somebody. If you look up Carlsbad Corvette death, you could probably find the story. And I saw that and was looking at it and just thought, he was 22. I'm like 2 or 3 years older than him. Maybe more. And then just thought, I don't know, I've gotten a lot more life than he did. You guys ever look at my wall back there? People have been asking me who the old dude is on the wall over there. The black and white picture. It's an AI-generated picture of a guy named Jim Morrison, who was a singer in a band called The Doors, one of my favorite bands. It's an AI-generated picture of what he would look like if he was alive today. He died at 27. He was one of those guys. It's actually a color picture, and I look at it. I don't recognize him in that picture. I don't look at that and go, oh yeah, that looks like, yeah, I could see it. I don't see it at all. But it's a good reminder that that's what he would look like if he were alive today, but he's not. So I wonder if Jim Morrison would trade places with me any day. To be able to just eke out. Like Queen Elizabeth, she ruled over an empire that spanned the entire globe. It was said of her empire that the sun never sets on the British Empire. It was all over the world. And her last words were, my whole kingdom for 5 more minutes. My whole kingdom for 5 more minutes. It's amazing what becomes important to you. And so I wonder if we could learn how to do that, how to just leave it in the hole, leave it in the pit. What would become important to us? So it's like we're born into this darkness, and then we discover some things, and then we let the darkness kind of overtake us after that. We become so sullen because it's like, God, but now I know how bad things are. Yeah, but you also know how good things are, and you know how kind of yin and yang everything is now. With the darkness that chases the light, and the light that chases the darkness, and it's this eternal circle that goes on. Which one do you live in? Whether you live in heaven or whether you live in hell, that's largely a matter of choice. Which one do you want to live in? Do you want to live in heaven or do you want to live in hell? Because if you want to live in hell, you're going to find a way to do it, man. You can dwell on things. You can let things eat you alive. I just saw something this morning about people who are, how Halloween is more subdued this year, and they were interviewing people who said that they don't feel right celebrating Halloween and dressing up for Halloween, given the state of the world today. And I think to myself, what the hell is wrong with you? You're 50 years old and you're still dressing up for Halloween? Grow the hell up. And besides that, you really aren't going to dress up because of what's going on in Ukraine? What the hell is wrong with you? You know, it's like, I just don't feel right wearing my sexy Frankenstein outfit with what's going on in Ukraine. Well, God, you're going to let that destroy every part of your life? You're sitting there eating your soup, it's getting cold because, there was a mortar attack in Israel today. Like, really?
I mean, sure, people died, but you can just...
It doesn't mean that, but here's the thing. Yeah, people die, but people live also. Which one are you going to do, man? Life is for the living. Life is for the living. Like whether you get in the hole or whether you leave your problems in the hole, that's a matter of choice. That's your call, and you make that call constantly. Yeah, it's attractive to live in hell for a lot of people until you can't escape it. Like it's like going towards a black hole. There's a part of the black hole called the event horizon that once you cross that threshold, you can't escape. You can't escape it. And people like to walk right up to the event horizon of their depression and their darkness, because it's almost like fun and exciting to feel this way. That all of a sudden you get sucked into it and there's no escape from it. The people around you don't want to be around you anymore, which makes everything worse. You can't live with yourself anymore, which makes everything worse. You can't be a positive influence in the world anymore, which makes everything just torrentially worse. And then at that point, it's too late to turn around and escape it. It's almost like we romanticize this idea of living in darkness. People might say, well, I like it. Maybe. But I don't know. Are you living in that hell by choice? Oh no, it's because of what's happened to me. Yeah, lots of stuff's happened to you. I get that. And I'm sorry for every single syllable of it. I mean that. But you have to decide at some point if you want to be in that hole or if you want to be looking down in that hole and leaving your stuff behind and going on and living. And I hope you choose life, man. I hope that, I mean that earnestly, dude. Like, I hope that you choose life. And I don't just mean living, breathing. I mean that you choose life with exactly as it is. With every bit of joy and suffering and excitement and depression and exhilaration and everything in between, the whole totality of it, and to embrace it exactly as it is. And not hope that any of it would be, not get hung up on the idea anyway, of it being any different, but instead just saying, this is life. All of its highs and lows. And adopt that ready stance. But again, whether you live, wherever you live, it's largely a matter of the choices that we make to decide to be that. And I hope you choose the better one, whatever that looks like. So, what the hell do I know? Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?